Recently, I put out a video about charging payment methods in which I discussed whether public charging should be easier to do. In that video, I discussed a couple of methods of automated hands-free mechanisms for authorising payment, namely Autocharge and Plug and Charge. Whilst discussing them, I said that these two were not created equal. One is secure and the other is really not. Well, today let me elaborate on that, as well as discussing other potential security issues associated with public charging that I want you to be aware of. Hello everyone, I'm Andrew. Thanks for joining me on the electric transition. As I mentioned in the intro, there are a couple of security risks associated with charging, and I want to discuss those in some detail today. Firstly, let me share my credentials, why I think I'm qualified to talk about these security risks. I've spent a lot of my working life in software development and for many years have been a software architect. It should be a part of the role of anyone working in software to understand security, to know about the risks and the avoidance strategies associated with those risks. However, sadly, a lot of those people seem to disagree. Software developers don't find security fun, and so they often concentrate on other parts of the job to the detriment of the general public, whose data continues to get leaked and compromised. Sad, but true. What tends to happen, therefore, is that one or two people end up focusing on security, and if there are any at a company, that could be the architects. As an architect, I did take the security aspects of our software system seriously, spending a lot of time understanding risks, identifying them and categorising them. With that done, then came the fun part, with fun very much being in air quotes there, because the bit that can be complex is the debate about risk levels, the negotiation about security versus convenience in a development team. Generally, those two things are at loggerheads. Better security often means less convenience, and so choosing what to do is about balancing those two things. The users getting what they think they want, namely ultimate convenience, versus what they probably expect but don't say, which is good security. My personal details were first compromised back in 2014 when eBay's systems were affected by what at the time was considered a huge breach, with the details of 145 million users extracted by the hackers, including mine. My email address from those days was then used in spamming and phishing attacks until I gave up on it and created a new email address. In those days, changing your email address was fairly manageable. It existed in only a small number of online accounts. These days, think of how many online accounts you have and how much of a pain it is to change it everywhere. That's why this stuff matters, and why it concerns me how often security breaches still happen. When that sort of data is extracted by hackers, they use it against you. They try all sorts of things to earn money from it, including selling the data to other hackers. You see, there are huge lists of email addresses and other personal details that circulate on the dark web, sold for just a few dollars to anyone who wants them. Imagine you are added to a list of people from whom a hacker might try to extort money, a list of potential targets. Bear this idea in mind. I'll come back to this in a moment. Anyway, let's get back to the topic in hand, namely security associated with public charging. The first thing I want to cover is that topic I mentioned in a previous video, the difference between Autocharge and Plug and Charge. Autocharge is a mechanism by which your car can be associated to an account with a charge point operator. If you enable it, a unique identifier on the car is used to recognise it, and then the associated account is billed for charging without you needing to do anything. Convenient. You plug the car into the charger and charging starts straight away. Remember what I said about convenience and security though. To make it work seamlessly with no complex setup, the unique identifier that is used is the car's MAC address, a long hexadecimal string that uniquely identifies your car, setting it apart from any other car. Those of you who are into networking might know about MAC addresses. They are effectively numbers that are assigned to devices able to join a network. It's usually baked into the hardware, although in some instances it can be overridden by a network engineer if needs be. When we plug a DC rapid charger into a car, the two talk over a network connection established between car and charger using TCP/IP, the network protocol used between devices in most networks, including the internet. As part of joining the network, the car happily gives out its MAC address in the clear with no protection or encryption. Any device which wants to know it can do. "Here's my address," the car merrily says. "Do with it as you will." And with it, the connection starts and away we go. So what's the risk here? What's the problem with using the MAC address for authentication? Well, firstly, it has to be a fixed value. It's assigned to a component of the car at its time of manufacture and retains that value for the life of that component, probably the life of the car. Secondly, it's given in the clear to anything you plug into, or at least it can be. Some AC charge points, particularly home charge points, don't use this networking protocol for communications. It's a bit more complicated to do this networking, so there is a separate, much simpler, voltage-based signalling that can be used instead, which keeps simple charge points easier and cheaper to make. However, both DC and AC charge points can use this protocol if they choose to, so anything you plug into could get your MAC address. Remember that car park you went to a month or two ago, the one with the free charge points in the corner, that dark corner accessible to anyone? Well, was it a charge point, or was it just harvesting MAC addresses? Asking anything that was plugged into it for its MAC address, storing that address, and then doing nothing else. You wouldn't have got a charge, but they wouldn't care. Maybe they got what they wanted. You see, to charge a car, you need to connect to something for the necessary power. That's not easy for criminals to set up. It is possible, of course, but it's a lot of hassle. However, if you only want to communicate with the car to get that MAC address, then you could make a battery-powered device, something portable, and that would be easy to deploy. As soon as they have a car's MAC address, then it can be used to try to start Autocharge, but not just by that person or gang. Remember, like compromised email addresses, the address will get added to a list and sold to whoever wants that list. People probably won't earn much from that sale, but do it enough, and maybe it's worthwhile. So what, I hear you saying, now someone can start an Autocharge session against my account, but as soon as I see that, I'll disable it, and so I'll only lose the money from a single charging session. To which I'd say, maybe. That could be right, but as an architect, my role is to really understand risk and try to imagine the worst case, and that's not it. What if someone were to build a device like an adapter that sat between a car and the charger? That device contained a list of MAC addresses and tried to initiate Autocharge with each address from that list. It works through that list sequentially, starting with the first and keeping going until one works, at which point the user of that device gets a free charge. How much would you pay for that device? How much would that dodgy uncle of yours pay, or that weird bloke you met at the pub once? There are some less than honest people out there. How many dodgy people do you think there are who would pay for one? 10,000? 100,000? 1 million? Let's say that they sell 50,000. That seems reasonable. For many months, they don't hit upon your MAC address. There are others in the list on whom it works first. But one day, when everyone before you in the list has paid their dues, it hits your address. Maybe just 0.1% of them are plugged in at the time. Suddenly, 50 charging sessions all start against your account. Each one of them bills the account £20 or so before you get it to stop. 50 sessions starting within a minute or two. Well, that means you just got stung with a £1,000 bill. Ouch. So I would say the amount at risk is bigger than you might imagine. Does that convenience of Autocharge seem so worthwhile now? Do you still want to enable Autocharge? Okay, so this sounds a bit unlikely, doesn't it? Having to build and deploy a device for gathering MAC addresses seems like quite a lot of work and probably wouldn't gather all that many. But what if that bit wasn't required? Let's think back to where those addresses come from in the first place, how they get assigned. They are put into a piece of hardware on the car by the manufacturer, but not necessarily the manufacturer of the car. You see, cars aren't made from scratch by a single manufacturer. A car manufacturer makes some of it, especially the body, but some bits are bought in from their suppliers, other companies. Usually these suppliers bid for contracts and the work is awarded to a couple of the cheapest. So probably those addresses are assigned by a third party and one who made the part for as little as they can. The address assigned in each case needs to be unique across all cars. I wonder how they do that. Well, the address is usually made up of two elements. The first half represents the manufacturer of that part, and the second half is then down to the manufacturer to choose. Now, they might choose to assign the value in that second half randomly, but we know that they really should be unique, and that would be a lot easier if they assigned them sequentially. Part 1 gets number 1001, Part 2 gets number 1002, and so on. Something like that anyway. If they do that, then making them unique is much easier, but it also makes them guessable. If they get assigned sequentially, then hackers don't even need to gather them in the first place. They can design their device to just generate them. And remember that they aren't assigned by the car manufacturer, but by the parts manufacturer, of which there might be only a dozen or so. Who knows, but maybe. Alright, so that's the worst case. What's the reality? Well, as far as I know, there is no such cheat device. Having said that, I'm not a criminal, so I can't say for sure. I mean, the fashion police might want to have words with me, but not the actual police. I think at the moment the cost of building that device might be higher than the price that criminals could charge for it. I think. But even if that's true now, it might change, and perhaps quite quickly. What's more, I don't know if MAC addresses are being assigned randomly or sequentially, but again, that might change too, as competition continues to drive down prices to the lowest bidder. It's also fair to say that implementation of best practice by the charge point operators would help as well. Some say that they check for fraud, such as multiple sessions starting in different geographical locations, which might stop this sort of problem in its tracks. However, software teams always have a backlog of work, and maybe some have prioritised adding features over enhanced security. That is a problem in software teams, sadly, and so some might not actually have that sort of feature in place yet. What we do know is that there has been some fraudulent activity associated with public charging, and some of it is with companies who offer Autocharge, such as EVgo. A quick web search for Autocharge fraud brings up a number of forum posts, and in some cases it's not clear if Autocharge was the culprit or not, but it might have been. What is also worth considering is that Volkswagen have updated their cars so that they no longer support Autocharge. They used to be compatible, but now they are not. That's because they used to serve that static MAC address which Autocharge depends on, but they have since been updated and now give out a random MAC address which is different for each charging session. I haven't found a statement from Volkswagen as to why they made this change, but it seems that they have, and you have to wonder why they made that change. The point is, I want you to consider the risk here. I don't think that the benefit is worth the risk. Waving a card is a very quick thing to do, and with contactless payment there is very little risk. I do understand the attraction. Not having to wave a card would be lovely, as is the case with a Tesla. That's why I am keen to see plug and charge widely adopted. Plug and charge offers this same functionality but solves this insecurity by using a public-private key pair to keep all of the communications secure. Importantly, it does not use the MAC address as an authentication token. That results in a bit less convenience, as a certificate has to be installed on the car as part of the setup process. But once set up, it's just as convenient and yet much more secure. Furthermore, plug and charge can sometimes be used with a roaming payment provider. Using a roaming payment provider means creating one account with them, not many with different charge point operators. Fewer accounts is a good thing because it reduces the attack surface area for your data. It's in fewer apps or services that, if they were to be compromised, could result in hackers knowing more about you. Plug and charge via a roaming payment provider really is a win-win in terms of security. Alright, before I finish, I want to mention a couple of other security risks associated with public charging. The first is the temptation to use QR codes. Some charge points and signage have these two-dimensional barcodes on them and encourage you to use them to download an app or visit a web page to enter your payment details. The problem with that is one we've already mentioned, that charge points sit in public areas. Therefore, anyone can walk up to them and stick an alternative QR code over the top. I think we've got technical enough already in this video, perhaps even too technical, so I don't want to get into lots of detail, but QR codes are very capable. They could take you to a website, perhaps a fraudulent website that looks genuine but isn't. They could get you to install an app on your device, again perhaps a fraudulent app, but they can also run code on your phone. The phone will ask you before carrying out any of these activities, but many people will just click OK and let it happen, and bad things can ensue. Next thing you know, your phone has been compromised, or you've given your card details to someone who shouldn't have them, and your day just became a bad one. For this reason, I simply cannot recommend using QR codes in public areas. Indeed, I'd go further than that and say do not use QR codes for charging. There is bound to be an alternative, so use that instead. Apps are generally fairly secure, so if the only options are using a QR code or installing an app, then choose to install the app. However, to install that app, do a manual search of your App Store for it. Check the rating and the number of downloads it has, and install it only if you are sure it's genuine. To date, Apple and Android phones and tablets have been locked to their own app stores. It appears that might change soon as a result of an antitrust suit, but bear in mind that the Apple and Google stores are currently the best bet from the security perspective. Apps are vetted before being made available via either the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. What's more, they can be removed if anything is detected or reported that is questionable. It's not impossible for a malicious app to make it into those stores. It has happened once or twice, but it is rare, so use those app stores as a preference. Just before I finish, I should say that I'm also looking into the security of the RFID cards offered by charging companies. This is a complex area, and as a result, it's taking me a little time to sort through it. RFID cards come in different flavours with different levels of protection. Some are well protected, whereas others are not. What I am struggling to understand at the moment is what level of security is required as a minimum by charge point operators and what payment providers actually use. If the level of protection used is too low, then RFID cards might be at risk of cloning, someone skimming its details and then creating a duplicate. What I have is an Electroverse card, and I've been able to read that and check what level of protection it offers. Because my card is a few years old, it doesn't use the highest level there is, but it does offer protection, so I'm comfortable continuing to use that for the time being. However, this is definitely an area warranting further investigation, so I will probably do a follow-up on it when I understand it more fully. Why not subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss that if and when it's released? And since this is a security-related video, please share it with friends and family. Let's get this information to as many people as we can. Alright, let me summarise that little lot for you. In short, I do not recommend using Autocharge. It works using an identifier that isn't all that hard to get hold of and might even be guessable. The unique identifier never changes and will be added to a list of compromised addresses if it ever is captured or proven to be valid after guesswork. Therefore, be even more cautious with a second-hand car, the identifier of which might already be known and have been added to such a list, ready for use in the future. Your account is at risk of fraudulent transactions in the future, and perhaps for more money than you might think. If you choose to ignore my advice and enable Autocharge anyway, perhaps for convenience on a road trip, then enable notifications for when charging starts, keep an eye on your transaction history, and perhaps disable it again after the road trip is over and the convenience is less beneficial. The other convenient solution is plug and charge. That one is secure. It does not suffer the same problems, so use that one instead if you can. Plug and charge also benefits from being supported by some roaming payment providers. Roaming helps you minimise the number of accounts you have. Fewer accounts means less chance of insecure apps or services leaking your data. By the way, according to Wikipedia, Tesla's authentication system is a proprietary version of plug and charge, so I think that one should be okay, but I haven't researched it a lot. The second risk we talked about was QR codes. QR codes can do a lot of things, and all of them could be bad if someone replaced the QR code on the charge point or the nearby signage. Therefore, I recommend avoiding the scanning of QR codes in public places. They may have been tampered with, and there should be an alternative, even if it takes a moment or two longer. RFID cards without sufficient security could be at risk of cloning. More on that in the future, I'd imagine. For the moment, keep your RFID cards close and be mindful of card skimming, where someone tries to scan your card. And finally, if there is only one thing you take away from this video, it should be this. There is often a conflict between convenience and security. If some process seems harder than you might like, then maybe it's simply a bad design. But maybe, just maybe, an architect fought for the implied requirement of your data being secure, properly secure. Well, I think that's quite enough for today. Having seen the video, what are your thoughts? Do you feel that you understand the risks of Autocharge better? And what is your assessment of that risk? Is it something you are comfortable using, or do you feel that it's best left disabled and that you'll wait on plug and charge to become available to you instead? Let me have your thoughts in the comments section. If you've liked the video, then it is a big help to me if you click the thumbs up button. And I'd love to have you as a subscriber of the channel if you want to see more from me. Thanks.